Hello everyone, it's Liz here. Welcome to my channel where I do gameplays at the time being because COVID has completely canceled all of my ghost hunting experiences that I was planning on doing. Anyways, welcome to my channel. The gameplays that we have been doing so far is 6 days of snow, and we are now on day 4. I apologize for two things. One, that due to the holidays, I did absolutely nothing. And a little extra afterwards, I did absolutely nothing. Probably because of the holidays. With all the excitement going on, I just needed a time to just like chill. And another thing is, you don't see my face. I got my new computer, so I am still waiting for my webcam to arrive. I do 6 Days of Snow. It's a game on Steam. It's a visual novel. There's no choices or anything. It's just a story. Um, but I need to throw out a warning. So the warnings are that there are tags in this that there is possible sexual content and nudity. And if you are absolutely uncomfortable with someone that's an adult having an affair or relations with a young adult or barely an adult person. If you are against any of that, I suggest you can watch one of my other videos. Now we got that all out of the way with the stuff. I can't remember much about this story. I know we have a writer who has an attraction and fantasies towards the daughter of the inn owner. I think it does take place in Japan, if I remember correctly. It's been so long. But I think, hoping that if I read more, it will help me out on remembering. I know episode 3 or day 3, they went to a shrine and they talked and everything. I think things are going to get a little intense now. So I guess we'll see. Alright, so let's get to reading. Alright. The next day progressed much like the previous day had, and the day before that, and the day before that. I awoke early, far too early, and flinched away from the cold like a newborn babe. Ryuko arrived at 7:30 to deliver my breakfast, prompt as usual. She didn't linger, but she seemed a touch more cheerful than before. She even smiled at me. I just want to say that this sentence is weird. Okay. After eating breakfast, a simple, hearty meal with crunchy bean sprouts and brown rice, I contemplated. I thought about Sachiko. I thought about Kenta. I thought about Kenji. I thought about the snow and isolation and my writing and fireworks and all the kind letters I had received from fans and how harshly the critics had condemned me. I thought of my past self, who had been shameless enough to write love-struck poems about the pretty, fresh-faced young girls he had kissed, without considering what lay ahead. What happened when the fireworks faded? Miso soup, endless cups of tea, and inane conversations about the weather. Sachiko's skin had been so smooth, like the seiken of a drum. Now it was withered and ropey. Shallow as it may sound, it was Sachiko's looks that attracted me to her at first. But now we were both getting old, her good looks were fading. What else had I seen in her all those years ago, other than her pouty lips and her long eyelashes? I didn't know. Sir, you have a problem. Even now, I still don't know. But I didn't want to think about Sachiko. Not in the Azami Inn. I much prefer to think about Raiko. I intended to write about the snow, but I couldn't find the words. Everything sounded too cliche. And not cliche in a pleasant way, like Ryuko had suggested, but cliche at its worst, dull and bland and uninteresting. So I scrapped it. Left with a desire to stretch my legs, I arose from my room and set off into the recesses of the Azami Inn. I walked down the corridor, the tatami floor creaking beneath my weight, as I expected it would. This did not stem from the lack of care, as it was clear Miss Kakiyoshi put a great deal of effort into the upkeep of this establishment, even with a skeleton staff. Meals were always on time, and they were delicious too. My room had been spotlessly tidy when Ryuko first ushered me inside, and so were the hallways. The tatami mats must have been dusted and wiped down with white vinegar on a bi-weekly basis. But that couldn't reverse the ravages of time. The inn was draughty and creaky and probably leaky too. The wooden furnishings were being eaten away by termites, and the building tipped precariously to one side like a drunken man leaning against a cane. Miss Kakiyoshi could scrub and wipe and clean as much as she liked, often enlisting Ryuko's help, it seemed. But that would not cure this building of its fundamental ailment. Old age. In a way, it was somewhat sad. It was evident at a mere glance so much effort had gone into this inn, but at what cost? I doubted it could have been a self-sustaining business. Most likely, it was running at a loss. Then again, I wasn't a businessman. It wasn't my duty to judge. But it did make me feel sorry for Miss Kakiyoshi, in its own way. Living in a secluded place like this, which was growing more and more secluded by the day, must have been enough to drive anybody mad. I crossed through the hallway and out of the entrance and soon found myself in the snowy grounds outside the inn. The sun was high in the sky, but it was wan and pale, hidden shyly behind the clouds. Maybe it was afraid of melting the snow. If it was, I would have understood. I felt guilty, too, for disturbing such a sheet of perfect, pure lily white. It was as I pondered this, my very presence crunching and compacting the once perfect snow, even as I stood there, that I heard a voice. It was a light, gentle voice, like the twittering of a robin. I was reminded of the bird I had seen skittering about in the branches of the trees the other day. But to my addled ears, this voice was more charming. "Hello, Eiji. You're up nice and early again this morning." It was Ryuko. Of course it was Ryuko. Who else in this cold, dismal place would address me so jovially? She held her trusty shovel in hand, as she had done before, the right sleeve of her kimono rolled up in such a manner that Miss Kakiyoshi would surely have scolded her if she had seen. Fortunately, Miss Kakiyoshi wasn't here. Ryuko looked well for it. "Hello, Ryuko," I greeted her with a restrained bow. "Were you shoveling snow again?" Around the hot springs. They're the only reason anybody ever comes here, so we have to make them look nice. It's a bit hard, though, when it's always snowing. Isn't it difficult work for a girl your age? I can manage it. I'm used to it. I'm tough. Ryuko gave me a reassuring smile, like a healthy, rosy-cheeked worker from a piece of communist propaganda, and flexed the muscles of her exposed arm. There was no muscle definition to be seen. Her arm seemed rather too delicate to support a roosting butterfly, let alone shovel snow for hours on end. But Ryuko, despite the irony of her gesture, hadn't been lying. She was tough. If you live high up in the snowy mountains, perhaps it's inevitable that your outer shell will be stronger than most. If Miss Kakiochi had been there to witness this display, I fear she would have fainted. Not only was Ryuko giving me a man, an unabashed view of her alabaster arms, but she was doing it on purpose, too. How scandalous. Of course, there was nothing erotic about the gesture. Ryuko meant it in a jest, obviously. Her eyes crinkled around the edges, and she started to giggle. For all Ryuko disliked her life, she was still able to smile, tell jokes, and laugh. The laughter pierced my heart. It hurt. Say, Aiji. Ryuko looked up at me, still smiling her coy little smile. If you don't believe me, I can prove it. Prove what? That I'm stronger than I look. Oh, I raised an eyebrow in amusement. And how are you going to do that? We could have a competition. A competition? I stroked my chin, like a bard pondering their next composition. That sounds interesting. It is. Lean in close and I'll tell you about it. You'll whisper it in my ear? Well, Ryuko relented. You don't need to be that close. Close enough. All right, all right. Now my interest really was piqued. I shuffled forwards curiously, surveying this impetuous young madame with folded arms. Is this close enough? Closer, Ryuko said, and I obliged. This performance repeated 3 times over until I found myself standing at a good deal nearer to Ryuko than I had ever intended. She was so close I could have taken her hand in my own if I had wanted to and linked our fingers together. I could have pressed Ryuko's tiny pale hand between mine, like dried flowers in the pages of a scrapbook. Ryuko's body was so small. I wondered what it would feel like to touch her. I wondered if her hands would be like ice. If her hands were like ice and her skin laced with snow, then her eyes were big and intense and burning, just like fireworks. Her gaze held mine unapologetically. She didn't look away, and neither did she hang her head. Her cheeks remained unflushed from embarrassment, colored the lightest shades of rose pink imaginable from the cool wind. I think, she said. I leaned forward to a touch more, captivated by every single syllable that fell from her lips. Yes, what do you think? There was a pause, broken by the soft sound of the morning breeze as it stirred her hair, my sleeves, my heart, and then... We should have a snowball fight. And so we did. Ryuko put her shovel away, then led me into the forest. She was so enthusiastic about her idea, she seemed half ready to take me by the hand. I wished she had taken it. I was too much of a coward to seize the opportunity for myself. Like all opportunities, however, it was brief and fleeting and passed without event. Ryuko didn't take my hand, and I didn't take hers. Instead, she ran ahead in front of me, as much as her kimono would allow her to run. and turned the wind spilling dark hair across her white face, begging me to hurry. I tried to hurry, but I was older than Ryuko and didn't want to cause myself undue injury. I explained my trepidation, I think I said that, to Ryuko, and she laughed and called me an old man. I didn't often consider myself old, and this adjective surprised me, but it was fair. Compared to her, I suppose I was. So the cover. Even as I followed along behind her, kicking a fine mist of snow up beneath my wooden sandals, I knew I was making a mistake. We were happy in the moment, yes. Almost deliriously so, like two lovers eloping. Ryuko was laughing as I had never seen her laugh, speaking with ease as I had never heard her speak, smiling brighter than a burning oil lamp. But it was a delicate, tremendous happiness that couldn't last. It was a happiness that could exist only within the moment, built on desperation and fear and future hurt. Even as we played, Ryuko compacting the snow in her dainty hands and hurling the projectiles at me with alarming speed, my heart remained troubled. When her mother found out, Ryuko would be in a lot of trouble. I would be in trouble too, of course, for distracting one of the maids in such an unseemly manner, playing with her, no less. If we'd been engaged in intimate relations, it would have been easy to understand. But this was the kind of thing children did. But Ryuko was a child. That was something I kept forgetting. Oh, how easily we can trick ourselves for the sake of simple conveniences. Ryuko was a child who had been forced to grow up far too quickly. She could be quiet and reserved, the insides of her arms and her legs or her skinny wrists carefully hidden away behind layers of cloth, but that wasn't who she truly was. Beneath the perfect image Miss Kakiochi had attempted to cultivate, Ryuko was a buoyant, bright, energetic young thing who loved life and derived joy from simple pleasures. Here she would wither and die. She was withering already. The roses in Ryuko's cheeks, in full bloom as she giggled and ducked and shrieked in the snow, would recede when she returned to the gloomy inn that she called a home. Ryuko had been born to laugh and live. She could have done so many things. But she had the misfortune of being born here. What could I do for her? How could I help this funny, cheerful, lively girl whose very soul, her essence, was being drained away day by day? I didn't know. But that spurred me on with yet more energy. I was too old to play in the snow, and my joints were aching. My fingers were trembling. I was sweating from the exertion, despite the cold, and Ryuko wasn't going easy on me. She had hit me 4, 5, 6 times, so many times I had lost count. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not when she looked like she was having so much fun. I doubted she got to have fun very much. Fun is important. It's a key aspect of our lives, so we often overlook, particularly when we get older. Why should we have fun when we have other, more pressing matters to attend to? Family affairs, daily chores, endless work? But Ryuko was too young to worry about such things. She shouldn't have to worry. I wanted to wipe all her worries away. Ryuko's head was tipped back. She was laughing. At that moment, I wished I was a painter or a photographer, not a writer. Writers can't capture moments as they happen. They can file images away inside their heads and attempt to recreate them on paper. But no matter how perfectly we try, it just isn't enough. Writers are a nostalgic sort of necessity, I think, always hearkening back to the past as we try to relive it. Affirm it. Adore it. But we can never possess it. Not really. When we write, the only things we record are memories, hazy, wavering, uncertain. Writers can never state anything with complete certainty. There's always some margin of error. There are some imperfections that can't be smoothed away no matter how we try. Perhaps it's true what they say, another cliche, but it conveys its meaning well. A picture can paint 1,000 words. But a picture of Reiko as she was then, tendrils of hair stuck to her cheeks, her face flushed with happiness, was priceless. I would have cherished such an image until the day I died. And where on earth have you been? Miss Kakiochi's voice was sharp enough to cut steel. Her eyes were just as searing and almost tempestuous in their wrath. My hostess' hands were held firmly on her hips, creasing the material of her kimono. It was clear she was trying to remain calm and cool, as was befitting of a proprietress of such an establishment, but it was proving difficult. That word is hard to say. Her chest rose and fell with ill-suppressed passion. It was a passion I hadn't known a woman like Miss Kakiochi was capable of feeling. But Miss Kakiochi was made of flesh and blood, just like me. Just like her daughter. Ryuko must have inherited her heady emotions from somewhere. Could her mother have been that source? But unlike Ryuko's, Miss Kakiochi's emotions simmered beneath the surface, like a volcano. They were unpredictable, and all the more terrifying for it. Ryuko certainly seemed terrified enough, because the poor girl hung her head, looking down at her feet. Her legs and ankles were flushed pale pink from the cold, and so were her fingers, slightly swollen from exertion. Her cheeks, however, had already begun to lose some of their healthy glow. It was just as I had predicted. Miss Kakiochi didn't give Ryuko further a chance to explain. Instead, she swept forwards, her sleeves fluttering, and took hold of her daughter's wrists, so tightly it must have hurt. Ryuko whimpered. "You should have been by the hot springs clearing away the snow," said Miss Kakiochi. Contrary to her obvious anger, her voice had dropped in volume. "Can you imagine how I felt when I went out to check on you, only to discover that you weren't there? Did you not stop to think about me?" Ryuko shuffled. "I did clear away the snow, though. I put the shovel back." "I don't care about the snow," Miss Kakiochi exclaimed. "I was worried about you. I was searching all over." I didn't think I was gone that long," Ryuko replied, her voice hushed. But it was the wrong thing to say. Miss Kakiochi's expression twisted horribly, until her face no longer looked like a human's. Rather, it looked some rough, crude facsimile made with clay. The eyes and nose and mouth gouged out by clumsy and inexpert fingers. Okay. My pronunciation is really bad with some of these words, And if I'm saying anything wrong, or if you see me struggling with them, can you please let me know how to say them correctly in the comment section below? I would really appreciate it, and I would really love to learn from you guys. From all the negative opinions I had about Miss Kakiyoshi, I never once thought she was ugly. She was unsettling, yes, cold and remote, like the location of her inn, but not ugly. She was too fair-faced despite her age, and her short hair framed her features most charmingly. Hers was a simple, understated prettiness, tarnished somewhat by age. But she was not pretty at that moment. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Not gone for that long? Miss Kakiyoshi repeated, her eyes narrowing into slits. I was searching for half an hour for you. A whole half hour. Well, half an hour is not that long, really. It takes longer to walk to Higashikawa. Half an hour is long enough. When you're a mother, half an hour is ample time to wait for your wayward daughter, worrying she might never come back. Why on earth would you think that? Don't you trust me? It is not a matter of trust. I worry because I love you, and I know how flighty you can be. You've been like this ever since you were a child. But I'm not a child anymore. You are a child, Ryuko. You're my child, and I want to keep you close. I want to keep you safe. But half an hour? A lot can happen in half an hour. Don't you remember what happened when you were 12 and you went for a walk in the forest? Miss Kakiyoshi paused, her shoulders heaving with emotion. It must have been a painful memory, one that I, a relative stranger, should not have been privy to. You said it would only be a short walk, that you would stick to the path, but you broke your promise. You strayed and you got lost, and I was waiting for you for hours and hours. I had to call the police, and they sent out a search party. I was terrified they'd find you buried beneath the snow, half frozen to death. That was a long time ago, Ryuko tried to counter, but her voice was trembling. It isn't the same. It was not that long. You're not as old as you like to think. But it's different. I came back this time, said Ryuko. I came back and I'm here now, and you can see me and talk to me and touch me, so why are you so worked up? Worked up, Miss Kakiyoshi repeated her daughter's inquiry, her eyebrows raised into two arches. I was making myself sick worrying about you. And this is what you have to say for yourself? You don't even apologize. Mother, No, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you answering back, Ryuko. It's unbecoming and supremely irritating. You're in no position to reason with me. You should be asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness for what? For being a bad daughter. Okay. So Ryuko is definitely a typical teenager, in my opinion, where they think like, oh, why are you worrying over nothing? God, I'm an adult now. And the mother is like, but I have to worry about you. It's same conversations ever, and then like the teenage daughter is like, why are you being so overprotective? And all that. So this just speaks volumes on how old Ryuko is to me. Ryuko's mouth fell open, stunned and shocked by the injustice of it all. But no words came out. Instead, there was a broken sob. But tears didn't well in the corners of her eyes. They remained suspiciously dry. Perhaps it was because she had known. As Raiko and I walked back through the forest, retreading our ugly footprints that scarred the pure white snow, she had fallen silent. She had shuffled a little closer to my side with each and every step, and again I had wondered whether she might take my hand, but she didn't. Instead, she had seemed content to exist beside me, our shoulders almost brushing as she sighed. I had a lot of fun, Eiji, she had said. That's good. I had a lot of fun, too, I had replied. But she said it in the past tense, with a maudlin look on her face. She had a lot of fun. When she returned to the Azami Inn, however, the fun would be far behind her. Fun was something Ryuko's childhood had been devoid of. Her life had stretched out in a long, lonely gulf without any friends. I had been silent up until now, anxious my interference would make matters worse, but I couldn't remain silent any longer. Ryuko isn't a bad daughter, I said. It was a simple statement, but it was enough. Miss Kakiochi didn't let go of Ryuko's wrist, but her grip slackened. She turned her head, looking at me with undisguised hatred, as no proprietress should look at her guests. It was the kind of look that would have earned this establishment a very scathing review indeed. Had I not known this gesture would be entirely useless and wouldn't help Ryuko in the slightest. In fact, it would probably have made things worse. Oh? Miss Kakiochi said, her eyes flashing. Oh? And what right do you have to say that, Mr. Tanabe? You have only been here for 3 days. Do you profess to know my daughter better than I do? I think Miss Kakiochi needs to take some time. People need to let her walk away and take some time to cool off. No, that isn't it, I said, struggling to keep my voice smooth. It isn't Ryuko's fault that she was absent. It was mine. What do you mean? I wanted to go for a walk, and I asked Ryuko to accompany me. I didn't feel comfortable venturing into the forest by myself. Miss Kakiochi looked me up and down. Her eyes narrowed. Is that so? Yes, I said, and I bowed my head deeply. I apologize for any offense I might have caused. But you didn't seem to have any problems going into the forest alone 2 days ago. Ah, yes, I remembered. I had asked Miss Kakiochi if there was anywhere I could go for a walk, and she had responded in return. Just keep to the signs. If you don't stray from the signs, you'll be fine. I had set off on my own, lost in my undulating, not entirely important thoughts. Ryuko hadn't been with me back then, neither had I asked for a companion. It was a little wonder Miss Kakiochi didn't trust me. Why should she? To her, I was nothing more than an unwanted interloper forcing myself between her and her daughter. It was crude, really. Uncouth. I think I said that right. As a stranger, I had no real right to insert myself into this conversation. It would have been much more gentlemanly to skirt about the two warring factions and retreat to my room. But I couldn't do that. I might have been a stranger, but I had become too involved with Ryuko to let her suffer alone. I just wanted to see if there were any interesting sights. I had thought Ryuko might know, given she has lived here all her life. I thought it would be better to have a guide than to search by myself. Sights? What sights? Said Miss Kakiochi. There are none. Yes, well, Ryuko told me that, but I was insistent. I'm afraid I caused some problems for her. She was in the middle of shoveling the snow, of course, but... You mean to tell me you took advantage of her? Miss Kakiochi pressed. Her grip on Reiko's wrist grew weaker and weaker. You forced her to accompany you against her will? I didn't see it like that at the time, I confess. I mean, I am paying you, so you are paying for food and board, said Miss Kakiochi sharply. Not my daughter. Reiko isn't for sale. Her time is rather more expensive than anything you could hope to give me. Yes, I realize that now. She's lucky to be cared for so deeply. I see now that I can't compete. Of course you can't, said Miss Kakiochi, sniffing. How could anybody compete with a mother's love? Well, quite. Miss Kakiochi sighed as though she had a headache and let go of Raiko's wrist. The young girl whimpered, rubbing at it with her right hand. Raiko's head was hanging so I couldn't clearly see her face, but perhaps that was a good thing. I knew she wouldn't be smiling, not like she had earlier. I feared this confrontation had knocked all the joy out of Raiko, like dust being beaten from a tatami mat. What if she couldn't bring herself to smile around me again? Her mother wouldn't have approved of it, I was sure. Her mother didn't approve of much. I appreciate that you were trying to do your duty as a good host, Ryuko, but you didn't need to listen to everything the guests say. You have more than enough work to be getting along with. Yes, Mother. And as for you, Mr. Tanabe, Miss Kakiochi straightened up, I think you should keep your distance from my Ryuko. The possessive Miss Kakiochi bothered me. She spoke as though she was daring me to lay another finger upon her most prized possession. I wanted to tell her that Ryuko was not a possession. She was her own person and not nearly as helpless or immature as Miss Kakiochi seemed to give her credit for. But I didn't think that we would have done any good. Perhaps Miss Kakiochi could not recognize Ryuko desired independence because she had nursed her as a baby. In her eyes, Ryuko would always be a little girl. Not just any little girl. Her little girl. Mothers always know best. Isn't a mother always knows best? That's so weird. This translation would have been fine if they got rid of the S. I apologize, I said again, bowing my head, because there was nothing else I could do. I didn't want to come between you. I can see now it was wrong of me. Quite wrong. That's a long paragraph. Indeed it was, said Miss Kakiochi archly. I know Raiko is pretty, but she's far too young. She doesn't have any experience. If she's charmed by you, I'm sure it was inadvertent. That is a weird word. A sniff. If you're after the actions of a pretty young girl, you can flirt with the other maids. Talk to Yoshiko or Miyako, but leave my Ryuko alone. And there it was again, the possessive. I could see it clearly, though Miss Kakiochi was no longer clinging to her daughter's wrists. There was a bond between them far stronger than that tenacious thread from folk legend, the red string of fate. This was no string. It was forged from iron. Don't know. The 5th day. Oh, we finally did it after so many interruptions. Alright. I think we're going to go back. We're going to save it here. Alright. Okay. Alright. So that was day 4. Interesting. So, Miss Kakiochi is not blind to what our main character is doing. I couldn't remember his last name at the beginning of this video. It's Mr. Tanabe. But anyways, the story is getting interesting. We just got done with the 4th day, and we're about to hit the 5th day. So, and there's only 6 days. So 6 days of snow. I lost my train of thought. Anyways, if you like this story so far, please let me know. If you guys have any suggestions on what I should read or play next, please let me know in the comment section below as well, along with any corrections of any pronunciations that I did wrong. I'm trying. But anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. I hope you stay safe. I probably will not have my webcam by the time I finish this series. So I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.